Today, January 27th, is the 74th anniversary of the lifting of the siege of Leningrad, one of the most awful, terrible, and incredibly inspiring stories to emerge in human history, and particularly from the Second World War. The siege began when the Germans surrounded Leningrad and cut it off from the rest of Russia on September 8th, 1941, and it lasted for 872 days. 1.5 million Russians were killed in the siege, and before it began, 1.4 million more were evacuated from Leningrad, women and children largely, many of whom died during the evacuation. The cutoff of food and fuel was so total that people starved. Most of the deaths were from starvation. There were actually 2,100 people arrested and most executed for cannibalism during this siege. It was heroic, the resistance of the Russian people during this. During the worst of it, the winter of 1941, temperatures dropped to 22 degrees below zero Fahrenheit, and people had to subsist on 125 grams of bread a day, and that's it. And half of the bread most likely was sawdust and other stuff that's inedible. And yet the Russian people persevered. They never surrendered, and Leningrad was liberated by the Russian army. The city is so beautiful, and if you visited there, the colors are just amazing. And it's hard to believe that a city as wonderful as this could have gone through a hell like that. One interesting personal note, my wife Eileen and I went to the Tsar's palaces outside of Leningrad that were occupied by the Germans. And I asked the guide, how did the palaces get preserved during World War II? And the guide said that before the palaces fell into German hands, Russians went around collecting little bits of fabric and furniture from every part of the mansion, of the palace, so that each drape would have a little cutout, each chair would have a certain cutout, each rug, each fabric, each piece of furniture. And then they took these cutouts and buried them. And after the war, they dug them up, and based on those, reconstructed the furnishings in the interior of the palace. Such an inspiring, amazing story. To put it into perspective, 1.5 million deaths is 6 times the number of men the United States lost in combat in World War II in all theaters combined. Amazing story. Thanks for watching.